it's good that you're going to be back because many of these issues are going to take much longer than one question to hammer through.
Right. That's right.
I'm going to continue to chip away at the lesser two evils thing because, and trust me, I want people to understand. I know the Republicans are scary as hell. I definitely understand that. I definitely understand the Republicans are scary. Josh Hawley is my senator. I know it. So I know what the Republican Party is, but I also know what the Democrats are. The explosion of homelessness, the expansion of the police state is being driven by black mayors, by Democrats. So yes, the Republicans are annoying. Yes, they are very malicious in their rhetoric, but neo-fascism, fascism, Republican, Democrat, same people are being affected. But anyway, I'm gonna move on just because we got so much. We have so much to discuss. I'm gonna talk about Ukraine. This is another issue that the Bernie Sanders left has greatly failed and greatly disappointed to the point where we created a nickname. We call them the NATO left. I mean, you have people who are braver than our politicians, like AMLO in Mexico calling out the NATO war. You have Lula calling out the NATO war. So you have left leaders all over the world outside of the European Green Party military-industrial complex that's willing out to call this war. You have South Africa and African countries calling out this war because of the devastation of the global working class. You have the doomsday clock that is closer to midnight than it's ever been because of U.S. funneling and escalating conflict with Russia and a nuclear power. So I want to ask you, what were your first task be in terms of the Ukraine war? What's your position on NATO? And will you pursue peace in Ukraine? What is your general take on what the direction the United States should take on this issue?
And this is our final question, Dr.
Yeah, this will be our last question.
Right, exactly. I know I got to think it forward with brothers in Oakland, but they can wait just a little bit. But you see, when you're in the process of dismantling an empire, you have to go about it by disbanding the instrumentalities of that empire. NATO has been a major instrument of U.S. imperial power. And when Gorbachev and others were promised that NATO would not move 1 inch when the Soviet Union was going under, excuse me, and a few years later, 14 former countries, excuse me, the former Soviet Union are part of NATO with missiles pointed toward Russia. And Russia is a wounded empire. America is the biggest empire in the history of the world. You see, if there were missiles in Mexico and California, America would blow them to smithereens the same day they were pointed. That's how empires behave. Now, Putin is a gangster. There's no doubt about that. The White House has its gangsters too. But empires behave like empires. They blow things to smithereen when there's a threat to their borders. So there was a major provocation of the expansion of NATO, which is an instrument of U.S. imperial power. And so the first thing you do if you're head of the empire is you got to tell the people the truth. You got to quit telling these lies about somehow this is only about Putin, the gangster, invading. The invasion is criminal. I'm in deep solidarity with the suffering of Ukrainian brothers and sisters. I'm in solidarity with the suffering of anybody. But they're suffering in part because of the proxy character of the clash between two empires. One's wounded with nuclear arms, shrinking economy, and the other's the most powerful empire in the history of the world, but it is undergoing deep decay and decline. And when it comes to invasion and occupation, the U.S. empire has absolutely no moral authority whatsoever, given the history of invasion and occupation of other nations, be they democratic or whatever. The United States does that anytime it wants, anytime, anywhere in the world. Going all the way back to indigenous peoples, going all the way back to the Mexican War, going all the way back to Spanish-American War, going all the way back to Panama, Grenada. We can go on and on and on. Guatemala, Iran, so forth and so on. So you got to tell people the truth. But then you do the practical thing, and then I got to leave. We're going to continue this next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, brother.
You bring together the Chinese elites with their empire expanded, and they got some things going on in Africa we get a chance to talk about in terms of its own kind of colonialism and neocolonialism. You bring together the Chinese, bring together the Turks, bring together Ukraine, bring together the Russians, and then America comes and said, look, we are pulling back on the military support. And one of the conditions is that we are going to have a ceasefire. We're going to stop this war. We're going to stop the overwhelming suffering of Ukrainian people. And we're going to try to come up with some kind of diplomatic process. That's the first step to stop the road toward nuclear holocaust, because that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed. When Biden says, I'm drawing the line, I'm not going to give this kind of military support. 2 weeks later, they cross that line. I'm drawing another line. I'm not going to give this. 2 weeks later, they change again. He goes on and on and on and on. And we've seen that over and over again. Yeah. And so I think we have to just tell the people, love the people enough to tell them the truth. I mean, it's basic. I learned that in vacation Bible school.
Yeah, that's the important part, because
love the people enough to tell them the truth. And the condition of truth is always what? To allow the suffering of the least of these to be heard. There is no truth if the least of these are rendered invisible. There is no truth of oppressed people and their suffering. Suffering is rendered invisible. That is what is crucial. And this is true in regard, we talk about reparations in that regard. Reparations about truth and justice. What's the truth about the history of slavery and Jim Crow and Jane Crow and redlining? And when you see the damage, what kind of repair are you going to have? Well, let's have a discussion about truth and justice. And it connects to all these different issues.